All right. Hello. Me and my friend and business partner, Jen Hall, were having a conversation earlier today, and I just kind of said, hey, let's record this. So you get to watch our recording. We're going to talk about food and messiness and how that's shown up for us and how we see it showing up in the world and what do you do about it. So not a super lengthy conversation, but just wanted to share some thoughts today because we can. So Jen, will you say what you had just said about dieting? Because I hadn't thought of it. I had not heard those specific words. I've thought about it in that way, but let's talk about that. So tell me
Yeah,
what you.
definitely. Of course. I was just scrolling through Instagram yesterday. I came across a post that was kind of blew my mind a little bit and talked about how dieting is a privilege. And because we don't talk about dieting very often anymore, I almost scrolled past it, but I was like, I'm gonna look into this a little more. There was points about different things, but dieting being a privilege because there's so many people out there that can't afford the foods that you would need to even go on a diet at all. It's a privilege to be able to even consider dieting.
Hmm. Yes, and to that, I've heard this recently too, and I'm going to admit it. There's some cognitive dissonance here for me. It's uncomfortable because we talk a lot about. I talk personally, and we in our membership talk a lot about um, intuitive eating and how you can find food freedom through that. And I think it was about a month ago, I came across this post from Nia, from the friend I never wanted. And she called out intuitive eating, kind of in the same light of like, intuitive eating is a privilege. It's not necessarily accessible for everyone. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? But her point was kind of what you had said, Jen, about like dieting is a privilege. Orthorexia is a disordered eating born out of privilege, I'm going to say, right? And I know that both of us have struggled with orthorexic tendencies, and I was sharing this story with Jen, and there were times in my life where, one, I've talked about this a few times, that I didn't give myself permission to eat because I thought eating junk food was worse than not eating. But even more than that, food, when it comes to food insecurities, that was like an emotional insecurity I had around food, right? That food morality prevented me from nourishing myself. But there were moments years ago, geez, how long? I'm going to say 10, maybe more than 10 years ago. My little family, so me, my husband, and my kids, we didn't have anything. We didn't have money to afford all the foods that we wanted to eat. Whether that was like rich foods or healthy foods, even because organic produce costs more than your normal produce or whatever, right? And we weren't living on the streets. We weren't completely destitute. I lived by my parents, so we were taken care of. So I don't even in sharing this story, I still had certain amounts of privilege, right? But at that time in our lives, we didn't have a lot. We relied on um, you know church welfare and food stamps and WIC and my parents again. And even when we could afford food, I know that there are times where I didn't allow myself to buy the cheaper food because it wasn't good enough. And therefore, me and my family might have gone hungrier than we actually needed to. Not that anyone needs to go hungry, that's not what I meant. But it breaks my heart that one, I put me and my family through that, and two, that this happens all the time. And between the two, financial and emotional food insecurities, whether you actually have access to food or you limit your access to food, is heartbreaking. And so, Jen, have you had any experiences with that, or any thoughts that you'd like to add within this realm of dieting and intuitive eating is a privilege, and how can we shift out of that so that we are honoring our body's cues in ways that are accessible, I guess? What do you
Yeah.
think?
Oh, I have a good story to share about this.
Awesome.
So I had struggled with orthorexia too, which is one way that Beth and I got to know each other, because I totally related to her story. And I'd been through so many years of researching about different types of food that I was in so much fear about what I was supposed to eat, that I would spend the money on the expensive food and the organic fruits and vegetables. And it got to the point where I was spending all of my time and more than our grocery budget on these healthy foods. And I look back now and I realize that because I spent so much time and energy on my orthorexia and those tendencies and buying all this expensive food, I missed out on a lot of other things that I could have been doing, and the money that I could have used for some other amazing things that did not include organic fruits and vegetables. So I used to complain that like I couldn't afford to put my kids into sports or after school activities, or even like, I don't know, taking my kids bowling or something simple like that. I would say there's not enough money, but then I would spend the grocery budget on buying organic fruits and vegetables and supplements, lots and lots and lots of supplements that are so pricey. But I was like, we need this because this is going to help us. I didn't even know what help us really meant, but I knew it was going to make my life better in some way, because I would be healthier and my kids would be healthier. But I was giving up pieces of my life basically in search of this health. And I look back now and I think it's so strange that I was giving my life away in order to try to get more life back. So it's super ironic. And so like leaning into intuitive eating now, which is totally a privilege, I can definitely see that, because I can go and open up my fridge and I can say, what do I feel like eating today? Where I've been through times where I've had to buy only exactly what's on my meal plan. And I don't have that privilege of saying, well, I'm going to eat the blueberries now and I'm going to eat this later. It was like everything was planned out and we needed to save the money or whatever. But I haven't been in the situation where I have been restricted from fruits and vegetables, or there's a lot of people that don't have nearly the privilege that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's definitely, intuitive eating is a privilege. I didn't even realize that until this conversation. It's kind of mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to still like honor that it's a privilege and be grateful for that, and realize how much more life I can live when I'm not putting all of my time and money and energy into trying to be healthy and just trying to be and to live.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Like what would be possible if more of us just leaned into that than what we're doing wrong or what we don't have. I've had this conversation with various people, and talking about their food stories and how they didn't have access to certain foods because of not just disordered eating habits, but because of financial burdens. And I think within this realm of intuitive eating, you don't, I think there's a misconception, and some people try to either simplify it or make it more complicated than it needs to be. And there is a reason why the last principle is honoring your health. I think most people probably want to skip to that. It's important that you learn to, call out the food police and listen to your hunger cues and everything, right? But that final principle of honoring your health, that includes simply eating. And I've been talking about that a lot lately. We've blogged about it a lot on our website. Just eating is enough. It's enough, right? Whether that's organic produce because you like organic produce and you can afford it, or that means frozen or canned vegetables, like that's enough because it's food, right? It's food. I don't care how you get it. I'd rather you ate something than nothing. And I know that, in our shared experiences of kind of that obsession with being healthy, or that fear, more appropriately, that fear of being sick is kind of what made us sick. There's so many years that I chased after chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue and realized that, I was hungry. I just needed to eat more, period, right? And And so that being said, planning to eat something in my book trumps meal planning that looks a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be messy because it's not perfectly planned, and it doesn't have to be. That's just, so my oversimplified rule is just plan to eat something. Plan to eat something because something is better than nothing. And so if you can afford intuitive eating, and that means you open up the fridge and you're like, oh shoot, I don't have those Kalamata olives that I wanted. I'm going to run to the store and buy them. Awesome. If it means that you're in a financial position where you open up the fridge and it's looking pretty barren and you're like, you know what, I would really like a salad, but my payday isn't until next week. What do I have access to now? And eating it, knowing that it's enough because you're honoring your health, because eating is that important. So intuitive eating is more than what sounds good. It's more than, it's more than what sounds good. It's honoring your hunger cues and your satiety cues. But in order to do that, you have to just eat, period. Mm-hmm. Right? And unfortunately, again, for some people, they can't honor their hunger cues because maybe they don't have access to food. So what do you do then? And anyways, I guess what I'm saying is giving yourself permission wherever you might be at as an eater, knowing that you and your food choices and your eating habits are enough. And all you need to do is keep existing, keep showing up, keep eating, and it's okay. And don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. So
get out of the shame cycle of saying this is all I can afford, but it's still not enough, and just realize that it is. That how we think and we feel about our food will have a lot to do with how our body digests it anyways. Mm-hmm. So if you're shaming yourself for the things that you have to eat, that will have an effect on the nutrition that you get from your food anyways. Mm-hmm. So being able to accept and say, this is what I have and this is enough, super important.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, just give yourself a pat on the back. Say, did I eat today? I sure did. That means I'm still alive, because if I didn't, I'd die. So good job. Good job, eater. It really is okay. So, well, thanks, Jen, for having that conversation with me. Is there anything else that you'd like to chip in or share?
Nope. I think that was, I feel good about that. Thanks for letting me come talk with you today.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure. Thank you. All right, go eat something.